Hello, it's Deborah from the attic, and today I want to show you the latest Tonic craft kit. This is kit 26, Baubles and Bows. We're going to start with this glue. This is a full bottle, 120 mils of Tonic Funky glue, and it has a nice sharp point on the top as well, so you can get lots of good detail in there. The sequins that you receive might be different to these. The ones that I have are called silver tinsel. There's also 25 metres of striped baker's twine. This is French blue. That's a very generous amount to do loads of projects with. The mini mica mist is called silver smoke, and you can use this as a spray or you can use this to create droplets, and I'm going to show you that in one of the cards that we make today. The mini glimmer paste pot is called blue topaz, and it coordinates wonderfully with the papers. And then we have these two really cute mini bottles. One is stone drops in chalk white, and the other one is crystal drops in Wedgwood blue. And each of these will perform slightly differently on your projects. The pearlized drops will give a sheen and a smooth finish, while the stone drops will have more texture. The papers always coordinate beautifully with everything else in the kit. The way that these are curated is what makes these kits such an absolute joy to work with, because they do a lot of the colour design work for you already. And the icing on the cake are these detail scissors. These are really lovely, and I'm going to just take the sticker and snip a little bit off so you can see how well they cut. These are smooth edge blades, so you get a completely clean cut, and you can see from the point on the front just how much detail you're going to be able to cut with these really nice and easy to handle little scissors. Now we're going to look at the dies and the stamps, because as always the dies are exclusive to this kit. You won't be able to buy these separately, and here they are all laid out, and they're all on the subject of Christmas and baubles, and there are some beautiful insets. So in this little round bauble there are two different ways that you could cut out the centre. So you could just use the circle in the bauble, or you could add detail with both of these halves, or with the two of the same halves in the same cut. And that's the same for this slightly pointed bauble. You can take away the centerpiece, or you can include it. You can just have this curvy cut, or you can have both cuts from your bauble. There are snowflakes as well, and dies to cut the snowflakes out. And there are also dies which will cut out these larger sentiments that say warm winter wishes and joy to the world. This fishtail banner is a really useful die to have in your collection anyway, but what's even better is that you get two slightly differently designed inserts that will fit into there. Card 1 is going to feature the snowflakes, so I have a side folding card, and I've also cut down a piece of the craft card with the diagonal lines on it that will sit on top of the base card. I'm using plain black ink to ink up the snowflake stamps, and I'm going to stamp them onto a piece of the pearlized card that came from the kit. I'm going to stamp 3 in total, and then I'm going to use the die cuts, and I'm going to run them through my machine. I'm going to hold the die cuts in place around the stamped images using some washi tape. And then when I take away the washi tape, you can see what a beautiful effect you get. Now I've gone back to my folded base card, and I'm going to use the mica spray, and I'm just going to take the end of it and splash some droplets over the top half of the card. And while that dries, I'll remove the seal from the inside of the bottle of my glue, and I'll snip off that top detail bit so that I can use the glue to stick down a piece of the diagonal card. I'm going to stick this over the lower half of my folded card. Now I'm going to use my scissors to cut off one of the sentiments. Look away if you don't like this sort of stuff. It doesn't harm the stamp at all. I want to release the words winter wishes from the rest of that sentiment. When I ink it up using plain black ink and stamp it at the top of where my card is glued on, you can see I get a really nice simple sentiment. And now I can position all of my snowflakes, and they have a little bit of foam paddery added to the back of them so that they will stand out and be a little bit dimensional. And again, using the detail point of my glue bottle, I'm going to add some dots of glue, and I'm going to complete this card by sticking some of the silver sequins all over the card. And with that, our card is complete, and it's got a nice shimmer to it. Moving on to card 2. I've got a piece of craft foam which is about 2 to 3 millimeters thick, and I'm positioning the round bauble and one of the inserts on top of that, and I'm going to hold everything down in place with washi tape while I run it through my die cut machine. And when it's released and I pull away the washi tape, I'm going to take that semicircle, turn it around and position it on the other side of my circle, making sure that I have a tiny little gap in between the two. I'm going to pop all those little pieces out from the centre, and I've also cut in exactly the same way a piece from the blue mirror card, and they both fit on top of each other beautifully. I'm taking the top piece from the slightly pointed bauble because I want this just to have a nice filigree cap on top of it, and I'm going to use this one. I'm going to do exactly the same, cut a piece from craft foam and cut the same piece from the blue mirror card. I want to do some stamping and embossing on this mirror card, and so I'm going to use an anti-static powder. This is more to stop my stamp sliding over this very, very smooth card. I'm using a clear embossing ink, and I'm going to stamp this 2 or 3 times just to make sure I give myself some options with the very best impression. And then I'm going to use white Nouveau embossing powder to cover this, and I've heat set this. It's had an interesting effect on the card. It's lightened it ever so slightly. I've decided that the bottom version is the best version, and therefore I've used a little scissors to cut it out, and I'm going to use the glue to stick this across the middle of my blue mirror card cutout. Once that's stuck in place, I'll use my scissors just to snip off the edges as they overhang that bauble. Now I'm going to glue all of the pieces into place, and I'm going to use the craft foam on the bottom. I'm going to put the mirror blue card on the top at a slight angle because I actually want to see the white coming through from the craft foam underneath. It gives it a little bit of extra depth and dimension. And I'm using one of my stamping blocks to hold everything down and give it a chance to glue. I've cut one of the textured blue pieces of card, so that will fit on a piece of white top folding base card. And now I'm using some of the offcuts from all of the craft foam that I've used to stick across the back of this card because this will give it dimension. I've left a little channel so that I can thread the twine through that without adding bulk to the back of my card. And now I'm going to thread my little cap through the baker's twine, and I'm going to glue everything down in place. It's just a very simple card with a very simple sentiment, but I think it shows off the cardstock really, really well. When everything's glued into position, I'm going to attempt to tie a very pretty little bow on my using my twine, and then I can add some glue to the reverse to all of that craft foam on the reverse, and then I can glue it onto my white top folding card. And I've left a tiny little white border around the outside of the card, and that pulls the white of the twine, the white of the embossing powder, and the base card all together. And when the glue has dried, our card is complete. Lots of lovely shimmer on there for Christmas as well. Moving on to card 3, I've used the glitter card and the fishtail banner with one of these inserts to cut out 4 of these pieces. I've also cut out a piece of the glittery cardstock which will act as a base for a smaller piece of the pearlescent cardstock. I've got a thin strip of the pearlescent cardstock which I've already cut out, and I'm using my skinny little sentiment that I cut away from the larger sentiment earlier to stamp in plain black ink across the centre of that piece of card. And this is how it's all going to line up, and I'm going to glue it in place. To get everything square, I've used this really handy ruler which has got a centre point. It means that you can work out the position of everything before you glue it down. I haven't glued down the little tails, I've only glued it at the top because I want the tails to give it a little dimension, and I've added glue to that tiny little strip with the sentiment on, and I'm completing the look with 2 little pearlized dots of the Wedgwood blue crystal drops. Card 4 is going to be a shaker card, and I've positioned everything that I want to cut out on a piece of the blue mirror card, and I'm using some washi tape to hold it down so that when I run it through my machine, everything will stay in position. I'm going to discard the centre of this. I can use that for another project. I'm just going to keep this outer shape. I've got a piece of the blue cardstock from the kit, and I've positioned just the outside rim, and I've run it through my cutting machine, and it's left me with the shape of the slightly pointed bauble. I've cut a piece of the blue mirror card so it is slightly larger, but because this is such beautiful card and I don't want to waste it, and also because I need an aperture on the inside, I'm going to use my scalpel blade and my metal ruler to protect my fingers. I'm going to cut away the centre, and I can preserve that and use that for another project. I'm going to prepare the acetate that I want to form the window of this card, and I use laminating pouches that have been run through my laminator empty. It makes a really nice sturdy pouch, and I always have these on hand so I'm never scrabbling around for acetate. I've cut it down to size, and I'm using a tape runner because that will give me instant tack on the inside of my card, and I'm going to position my window onto the glue. Turning it to the front, I'm going to take my glue, and that detail nozzle is absolutely perfect for adding little dots of glue to the outside edge and also to the inside of the cap so that I can glue this onto the card so it's like a frame, and then everything can be glued down onto my blue mirror card frame. And here's what to do when you do things wrong. I should have made a little pencil mark through the aperture of my bauble before I added my window, but I forgot. So now I'm using the bauble die cut, and I've positioned the die cut on my white base card using the top card to help me get it in exactly the right place. I've secured it down with washi tape so that I know exactly where I need to stamp, and I've just used plain black ink to stamp my sentiment. I've got some more craft foam, and I love using this for shaker cards because it allows you to put the foam exactly where you need it to be. So I'm going to add some around the outside and then some around where my aperture is. It doesn't look pretty, but it doesn't need to because it won't be seen. I'm adding some of my sequins to the inside of my design, making sure that they will be captured within the aperture. And now I'm going to use the glue all over my craft foam, and then I'm going to stick it down on top of my design, making sure my sequins are in exactly the right place and they don't escape. And hold everything down while the glue dries. I'm going to take a couple of my stamping blocks and just let them sit on top of the card. This will only take about 10 minutes, but it means that everything is perfectly glued down. Now I'm going to use the chalk white stone drops to add little dots of snowflakes all over my card. And for our final card, we're going to do something different with the colour. As you can see, I've got colour on my nails as well. I've just come back from holiday, and aren't holidays great for giving you a chance to catch up on things like nail varnish? I've cut down some of the card that has the diagonal lines on it, and I'm going to glue this down onto a white base side folding card. But before I do that, I'm going to do some embossing on the reverse of the diagonal card. This is so that I've got beautiful craft card that will match with this thin strip that I cut down that will go down the left hand side of our card. The embossing powder that I'm using is pewter, and I've made it myself just by combining gold and silver, and this way you can control how much gold or how much silver you want in it, and I was going for something that I thought would be a nice match for the diagonal lines on the left of our card. I'm going to use the round bauble die to cut through this and leave myself a little aperture. Once I know where I want it, I'm going to use washi tape to hold it in position. And even that little circle is a beautiful thing. You could use that as a gift tag. I've glued down the diagonal lines on the left of my card, and I'm going to use the aperture to help me position my stamp. I'm using the stamp which reads Joy to the World, and I'm going to ink this up with clear embossing ink, and then I'm going to use my pewter mix again to sprinkle over the top and heat set. That's it, heat set. It's got a beautiful shimmer, and I can glue my top card with the aperture over the front of it, and our card is finished. I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. As always, thank you for your time. I'm going to leave you with some close-ups of all of the cards that we've made today, along with a little music. And until we meet again, take care.